Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to do the Cybercore Polygel nails using products from my very own brand. We're going to go through prep, application, shaping, and nail art, so stay tuned and I hope you enjoy. And we will be using products from my brand today. You can shop at doperthanyournails.com. The link is in the description. We have a variety of gel polishes, polygels, brushes, and art gels. We have a new collection releasing very soon. In today's video, we're going to be using our entire polygel neutral bundle and art gels. And you can always use code YouTube to save 10% at checkout. And be sure to subscribe and like and comment on this video so you can follow along for weekly nail tutorials. So the key to any long-lasting nail set, including polygel nails, is nail prep. So we are starting off with pushing back the cuticle very gently. This is gonna get that skin off of the nail plate and make sure that we have a nice clean surface for our products to stick to our nails. There are a couple of other tools that I use. So I use a micro taper bit. This is from Erica's ATA. Her tools are the only ones that I really trust when it comes to any e-file or dry manicure tools. And then I do use a fine grit sanding band at the very end. This is a 240 grit sanding band, so it is a very fine grit sanding band, and I also like to season it. Basically, this just kind of softens the edges so they're not so rough if you are worried about cutting yourself, but I do use it at a low speed, about 4 to 5 RPMs, and we are just going over the entire nail plate. And we're keeping this very minimal, but it also just helps, again, clean up anything that's left behind and make sure that we have a nice, dry and gently kind of roughed up surface for our products to stick to our nails. I pretty much use Young Nails products when it comes to prep, so I use their swipe to dehydrate and cleanse, and you'll know your prep is good if your nails, once you kind of swipe them with the lint-free wipe, they kind of just dry up right then and there. And for the nail tips, we are using the Vivace Stiletto nail tips from Amazon. I use these like all the time when I'm doing a long almond set, but I promise the next set will be a different shape. You just want to make sure they fit sidewall to sidewall. So these are examples of nail tips that are too big, and then an example that is too small. So this is exaggerated too big, but as long as it fits sidewall to sidewall and you don't have to like put a lot of pressure for it to fit, it's a good fit for you. It's always better to go a little bit bigger than smaller if you are in between sizes than just file down. And then I use a brush-on glue. I would recommend a brush-on glue. I am not a fan of the glues that you kind of squeeze out of a tube. I think that the brush-on glues are a little bit easier to control. You just want to make sure you don't get an excess glue on your on the bottles if you're worried about the cap getting stuck. But anyways, I pretty much just add a small drop of glue at the center of the nail tip and kind of bring that out. You don't want to overdo it with the glue because too much and your nail actually won't stick at all. It'll slide right off. And then just make sure it's nice and straight and press for about 10 seconds with pressure. You can also kind of pinch at the sides if you want to make sure that the sides are fully sticking as well. So this is kind of my tried and true process, and at this point I've been doing this for quite some time, so it's very quick and easy when I get to this step. This step used to take me a long time because I wasn't using the right products and techniques, but so try these out if you haven't already. Then I like to reshape the free edge ever so slightly. I'm just slightly rounding it out so it's a little bit more of a long almond, and I'm using a 100 over 180 grit file. If you didn't know, so the numbers basically signify how coarse your file is. So the lower the number, the more coarse your file is. So like an 80 over 80 grit hand file is really coarse. And something like 240 grit, like we talked about the sanding band, that's like a very fine grit sanding band or a fine grit file. So I'm using the 180 side when I'm doing my shaping because I don't want to use something too coarse, because obviously these are plastic nail tips, so you don't want to overdo it. But as you can see here, this is kind of the difference that shaping makes. And when it comes to doing kind of an almond or round shape, you basically want to focus on filing under the free edge. That's going to round it out, and then you can slightly round out the corners and edges. And I do like to file the sides just a little bit as needed so everything's kind of nice and straight and cohesive. Also, these nail tips are on Amazon. I believe they're on my Amazon storefront, though I haven't looked at it in such a long time, but the link should be in my link tree if you're curious. And then we are going to take that same 240 grit sanding band and go over the entire nail tip and just make sure everything is flush with the natural nail. This is also pretty minimal. You don't want to overdo it because it is a plastic nail tip. You also want to stay off the natural nail itself. We're just focusing on the actual nail tip that we've glued on. And I do try to taper in the edges ever so slightly as needed, just to make sure that that area is nice and flush as well, because the more cohesive and straight this area is and it's more flush and kind of natural looking, the better your application is going to turn out and the shape that you want. I have noticed in the past when that area, for example, if you use a nail tip that's too big or small, or it's not flush in the way that it should be, it kind of makes for weird kind of bumps and uneven areas in your application, and it just doesn't look as cohesive as it should, if that makes sense. So anyways, once you're done, you're gonna take some alcohol and a manicure brush and just get rid of all that dust. And then we're gonna take some Young Nails Protein Balm. This is our primer. I like to start at the kind of where the natural nail and nail tip meet and then work my way up. I do 1 coat, and this you just let air dry. If you are struggling with lifting, you can try 2 coats, but I would keep it thin. Then we are going in with our gel base coat. So a gel base coat is very important for Polygel, and we are going to be using the Polygel from my brand, so you definitely, for our product, you will need some sort of gel base coat. And I do like to apply it to the entire nail, including the nail tip, and then you want to fully cure in your lamp for 60 seconds and do not wipe off the sticky layer. This is going to make sure that your Polygel has an anchor to basically hold on to and make sure that it sticks to your nail. So many people on TikTok have been asking me about a gel base coat from my brand, and we are working on one, I promise. It will be out in the near future, hopefully. We just have like so many things we're working on like simultaneously, so it's definitely on my list and it's definitely in the works. The one that I'm using here is actually a potential final product that may come out. And then we're gonna go in with our Polygel brush and our isopropyl alcohol for application, 70% isopropyl alcohol. This is the brush I'm using. This is also on our website. This is our medium hybrid gel brush. It has a bigger brush head with kind of a rounded edge that makes application easy. And it has a really cute acetone-free handle with kind of a pink chrome shift. And we are using 70% isopropyl alcohol. So I just want to give some examples here. I try to do this each time I make these videos just because it is a common question, but when it comes to saturating your brush, you don't want to just dip it in and go in like that. That's too much liquid. You also don't want to get rid of all of the liquid because you do need a little bit to help mold your polygel and kind of maneuver it. So I like to dip my brush in, wipe it on the lint-free wipe like 2 to 3 times, and go for something in the middle like this. And for today's set, I'm going to be using every polygel in our neutral polygel bundle. This is one of our most popular products, which includes all 4 colors. So we're going to go in with Coquette Blush first. It's a very soft pink on the thumb, but these are all 4 of the polygels. So we sell them individually, or you can get a bundle with just the polygels. You can also get the brush individually, or you can also get the bundle with the brush. The bundles are a little bit more discounted. And these are all 4 colors from left to right: Coquette Blush, Pink Essence, Wispy Peach, and Desert Rose. Desert Rose is my personal favorite. The pinks are really popular. Wispy Peach is also very popular. It's a really nice neutral color. So we're gonna use all 4 of these today, and we're gonna start with Coquette Blush on the thumb. So this is the soft pink color. I would recommend using some sort of tool like this to apply your polygel, just because it kind of gives you more control over where you place it. And I like to place the first bead where the natural nail meets the nail tip, and you basically just start using soft patting motions and dragging motions to flatten the product out and basically make it fit to your nail tip. So this is where using a pre-shaped tip that's kind of shaped to exactly the shape that you want it. It's nice and flush, really helps because you have a very easy guide when it comes to your application. You just make your product fit to the nail tip as closely as you can. And I do cure in between beads, so before I go in with the second bead, I've already cured for 60 seconds in my lamp. And the second bead is gonna be our cuticle / apex bead. So when it comes to placement, you don't wanna place it too close to the cuticle. So where I'm gonna place it is right below, and then we're gonna gently work our way up with it. So we're gonna use the edges of our brush to tuck it into the corner and then also blend it down. I've heard a lot of people say that some polygels don't blend nicely over like another bead you've already laid down, but this one actually blends very smoothly and you won't see any harsh lines. So if you're concerned about that, it's not a problem with this brand. And again, we're just gonna tuck into the corners, but try to make sure that we have a nice apex area that's not too flat, but has some structure. These are quite long, even though they're an almond shape, so I do want some structure there. And that's how we pretty much finish off with our application for the thumb. For the pointer, we're gonna go in with Pink Essence. This is a really nice bubblegum pink color. If you're really looking for like that acrylic look, I feel like this color really gives you that. It's like a really deep pink, just super fun for like summer. I mean, all of our colors give the acrylic look, but this color is really popular too, and one of my favorites. I mean, they're all my favorite, but anyways, we're gonna go in on the pointer. So we're doing the same thing. We are applying our first bead where the natural nail meets the nail tip, and we're just gently dragging that down, fully curing, and then going in with our cuticle bead. So let's also talk about temperature. So polygel is also temperature sensitive, just like acrylic. So in the summer, you might find your polygel is runnier if you are in a hot workspace. I keep my workspace pretty cool, but if you are struggling with that, you can try sticking it in the fridge for a few minutes. Vice versa, in the winter, you might find that it's super stiff if your workspace is super cold. So that's when kind of warming it up in your hands, just giving it some time to kind of warm up can really help. So I just wanted to put that out there because we are in summer now, basically. So you might find that some of your polygels are runnier, just depending on, I mean, any brand that you're using, you might experience that. But for the most part, if your room is pretty temperature controlled, it shouldn't be a huge issue. So for the middle finger, we're gonna go in with Wispy Peach. This is a really nice neutral color. If you're just looking for that classic neutral color that's like, it's not doing too much, you know, it's kind of, you know, plain is not the right word, but, you know, it's really just like the perfect base color, then this is the color for you. So we are going in with our first bead. And also, when you are using your brush, you are basically working on top of the product. So you're not trying to like stab your brush in there to where it's getting kind of like stuck in the polygel. You're using light tapping motions and a light hand to pat and drag. So that's another thing to kind of be mindful of, because you'll see my polygel's not sticking to my brush, but it's also, I mean, the product, but also the technique of just working on top of the product and using light tapping motions, light patting motions, and then making sure your brush is saturated enough that you pretty much, your polygel is moving exactly where you want it to. And this is where the edges of this brush are really helpful for tucking that polygel into the corners for the cuticle bead, and using the body of the brush to kind of drag the rest down. And the second bead I also cure for 60 seconds. And then for the ring finger, we're gonna use Desert Rose. This is my personal favorite color. It's like a dusty rose color pretty much. This is what it looks like. So we're gonna go ahead and take our first bead and apply it where the natural nail meets the nail tip. And to take a closer look at this brush from kind of the side profile, you'll see that it's dense towards the base, but it tapers off at the edge. I think this really helps with the application, and this is why I kind of designed this brush in this way, so that you kind of have two parts that are kind of working for you here as you're doing your application. You have the denser base for when you're kind of using the body of the brush to drag everything down, but then you also have that tapered edge so that you're still kind of building structure, and you have a thinner part of a brush to use for the cuticle area, the apex, so on and so forth. So here we go again, just using the edges of our brush to tuck it into the cuticle area, working it up towards the cuticle, and then dragging the rest down. Once you fully cure, there is going to be a sticky layer. This is the inhibition layer, so just wipe it off with some alcohol. And for shaping, we are going in with our 5-in-1 bit from Pana. This is a fine grit one to start off. I use this to clean up the cuticle area and just make sure that area is nice and flush. I use this at a speed of about 4 to 5 RPMs. You also want to make sure you're using a dust collector and wearing a mask. Next, we are going to use a round Pana bit. This is a coarse bit, and I like to use it along the surface of the nail. This is also really great for removal, so whenever you're ready to remove your set, you can use this bit to file off the bulk. But it's also great to just go over the entire surface of the nail and make sure everything is nice and smooth. I do use it at a higher speed. If you're comfortable, you can also use it to kind of clean up under the sidewalls and straighten those areas out. So yeah, pretty simple. You'll see me run it along the entire surface of the nail and over the cuticle area, just like once or twice, nothing too crazy. If you have it at a high speed, it is gonna file away the product quite quickly, so just very minimal usage in the cuticle area is usually fine. Now we are finishing off with hand filing. This is my favorite part because this is when I feel like everything really comes together. So I'm using an 80/80 grit hand file, and I've already seasoned the edges so it's not too sharp. And I always start underneath the nail just to make sure the sidewalls are really clean. If you feel like you're seeing a lot of bulkiness in your nail, it might actually just be coming from underneath the nail versus on top of it. So make sure your sidewalls are clean. I also like to file against the sidewalls and then across the surface of the nail. I just do it until I see this cloudy texture along the entire surface, which means that I've hit pretty much every area. And then we go ahead and repeat on the rest of the nails. So when you're filing under the sidewall, you also want to make sure you're keeping your file straight and that you're not digging into the side of your nail. I mean, I try to focus on the kind of lower half actually versus upper, because it's really easy to accidentally create a notch in your nail. And this also helps any product that's gotten stuck under there come right off. Like you just saw that little piece come right off. So filing underneath helps with that. And then we're just gonna file against the sidewalls, make sure everything is nice and straight, and then along the surface of the nail. You could skip filing the surface of the cuticle area too much if you feel like it's already kind of to your liking, because you don't want to overfile it. But I do think it helps kind of smooth everything out, at least on the like bottom 3/4 of the nail. So that's how everything is looking. And now we're gonna finish off with some cuticle oil and a buffer. This just helps get any scratches out and make sure that everything is smooth. Different type of smooth from like filing with a hand file, but more like a polishing, like when you polish something and it's like shiny and smooth and like everything kind of glides on it. So this is just going to create a really smooth surface for your nail art. But I will say you want to make sure you thoroughly cleanse with alcohol or acetone. I'm using alcohol in this case because you don't want any leftover oil there. So this is how everything is looking. And since we are kind of highlighting our neutral bundle in this video, I want to show you what everything looks like with a top coat, just so you can see what all the colors look like from our site with a top coat before we get into nail art. So this is Coquette Blush, really nice soft pink, very dainty, super cute for any time of year, honestly. And this is Pink Essence. This is the bubblegum pink. This is really pigmented. And this is Wispy Peach, very classic neutral shade. And then Desert Rose, which is kind of the dusty rose, also a nice neutral shade. And this is how the base colors look, just plain. And then I did go ahead and just buff that off because now we're gonna go and do nail art. So I was just showing you for the purposes of, for you to be able to see what the colors really look like. So now we're gonna go in with our art gels. We're gonna use Supernova from our Celestial Love collection. And this is what the collection looks like. It comes with 8 art gels. These have a thicker consistency, but they're still very flowy and easy to use, very pigmented. So I like to use these for French tips. This is our solid pink shade, Supernova. You can see it holds on the brush really well. And we're gonna be doing a kind of Cybercore design with a French tip as the base. So I'm just taking a 12mm brush to draw the smile line, and then I'm taking our art gel brush. This comes free with every full Celestial Love collection, but you can also buy it individually. It's great for applying the art gels or just polish in general. I'm filling in the free edge and then filling in those gaps with a liner brush. And then I also wanted to add a little bit of Venus Embrace on top. This is a super stunning kind of electric pink with a color shift in it. It's almost like a chrome shift in the color itself. You can just see how stunning the effect is with just a thin layer. So I'm applying a thin layer over that, and that's gonna be our base for all of the nails. This is actually kind of inspired by a set I did about 2 years ago. This is like one of my all-time favorite sets, but we are doing kind of a new and improved, not necessarily new version, but like, I guess like a remix of it because it's a different shape. So anyways, we are gonna draw that kind of cyberpunk design on the thumb. It's basically a elongated U, and I'm using a chrome gel paint for this. And we're gonna make sure that we kind of mirror it at the bottom. So Cybercore designs are actually really great for practicing your line work. So we're just gonna go ahead and connect everything, and then we're gonna go ahead and kind of accentuate, I don't know what the right word would be, but we're gonna kind of make everything look more flowy and connected. And so the key to this is actually just filling in those corners where everything connect underneath the design rather than on top of it. So that's what I've done here on all 4 corners there. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you that process again on the rest of the nails with different designs. And you can always file if you feel like your top coat added any bulkiness. So we're just gonna go ahead and map out our next French tip using that Supernova shade. So pigmented and creamy, just super easy to use for like line work and even like for filling in areas. You can see here it works great for even filling in the free edge. So I love using these for French tips. And then we're gonna go in with our layer of Venus Embrace. So I do fully cure the Supernova before I added the Venus Embrace on top. The art gel makes it super easy to apply. And we're just gonna go ahead and make sure we apply that over the smile line and make sure everything is filled in and fully cure that as well. And we're gonna go ahead and do our next kind of cyberpunk design. So it's gonna be kind of a long line going from top to bottom. So this is really about using the different pressures of your brush. So really I'm using the tip of my brush and lifting that up when I want the line to be thinner. And when I want it to be thicker, I'm using the base of my brush and really pressing down to add pressure. So you can see like right here, I'm really focusing on the tip. So this is where using a longer liner brush really helps. So we're gonna go ahead and repeat. Normally I would have done all the French tips at once and then the cyberpunk design, but for some reason, this time I just wanted to do like truly do one at a time, because I feel like it shows the process a little bit better in this case. So we're gonna go ahead and repeat the French tip and also using a longer liner brush for the French tip. And then we're gonna go ahead and do the cyberpunk design. So you can see here, I'm really using the tip of my brush to make sure those lines are kind of thin. So it's very light pressure. And we're basically drawing like 3 wavy lines, and we're gonna go ahead and fill in the corners here. So this is where I mean that just filling in and accentuating those corners is what really kind of brings that Cybercore design to life. And you can do this honestly with any type of design. Like you could just draw some abstract lines, accentuate the corners, and you got like a cool freestyle cyberpunk design. So this is me just kind of showing you again, we're focusing on just the corners and we're really working on the edges of the design versus like adding thickness to like the lines that we've drawn connecting everything. Those are actually going to stay pretty thin. So you can see the improvement from what I've done a few years ago. Like here I kind of made everything kind of thick and the line work isn't as clean. But in this case, I mean, this is where practice just really makes perfect, but you will kind of, learn over time the techniques that kind of will give you the type of nail art you're going for. But again, so the key here is really just focusing on those edges where they connect and leaving the lines that we've drawn to connect everything alone, leaving those very thin. And then we're gonna add our top coat, and here is how the nail set is looking. We're gonna go ahead and finish off with the ring finger and pinky. And after I've done the same French tip design, so this part's a little bit repetitive, but I just try to make sure everything is lined up so that the smile lines and French tips are actually like the same size and length and design. So I kind of try to visually map that out with my brush. And we're gonna go ahead and add Venus Embrace. And this is where using your pinky to stabilize really helps. It just helps make sure that your hand isn't kind of shaking and that you have kind of precision and control over whatever type of nail art or design you're doing. So same thing here, we're gonna start drawing long lines using the tip of our brush to make it very thin. And we're just gonna do like kind of like swoopy lines, and then we're gonna go ahead and connect at the center, keeping that thin as well. We're really using the edges of our brush, but the longer bristles really help everything stabilize. And then for this particular design, we're only gonna kind of accentuate this kind of connecting piece in the middle, but we're gonna try to make sure it's not too thick and just make sure everything is really curved. Like when in doubt, just make your lines more curved and kind of keep connecting everything. But again, we're leaving those lines at the top alone so we don't make those thicker. And that is that for the ring finger. And same thing for the pinky. So I've already drawn my French tip for the pinky, so I'm not gonna show that again this time, but we're just gonna go in with the cyberpunk design. This one ended up being kind of a thicker version of the pinky, but I feel like it worked in this case. I kind of wanted to do it a little bit more like circular, if that makes sense. And you can always use a cleanup brush if you mess anything up, but we're basically doing like 2 kind of elongated U's that are connected. And again, we are accentuating the corners, the edges. We're not really accentuating on top of that U shape. We are doing that underneath for the most part. And I would recommend definitely using some sort of chrome gel paint because it is going to be a thicker consistency. I have one that I am working on for my brand, but it's not out just yet. But really any chrome gel paint should be okay. And that is the pinky once it's top coated and done. Here is the final result. I actually really love how the different base colors look together, and the Cybercore design is very trendy and on brand for summer. Here's the final photos and videos. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Be sure to subscribe, like, and follow, and check out the description for more information, and I will see you in next week's video.